My name is Bernadette Smith. We're going to talk about HR for non-HR managers. I'm a member of the group, the Thrivalist Life Coaches, and thank you very much to Comcare Medical Scheme for sponsoring this. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. In 2022, I decided I would step away from the corporate world. I had done 40 years plus in a multinational oil company, and I had worked extensively in Africa, Pakistan, and the Middle East. And I decided that it was time to go it alone and to change my life completely. So I was a learning and development advisor for many, many years. Mainly working in supervisory leadership and targeted selection interviewing techniques for our managers. And while I was still in corporate, I actually did inner life skills training coaching. And then I went on to do neuro-linguistic NLP coaching as well. Two different types of methodology. And this chapter is more focused in my life on myself, having more holistic attitude to life, growing more flowers, coaching more people, and helping them to get a different mindset, a different behavior, and for them to work on their personal leadership. I've seen numerous managers flourish over the years by their coaching and their ability to do some self-reflection and for them to be able to grow. And so that's where my passion lies these days. I live in Cape Town, so if there's anybody else from Cape Town, it's, reach out to me. And I really would like to talk to you about HR for non-HR managers today, because managers think HR is an overhead and that we just look after leave and salaries and sick leave, and we come to support them when they're in crisis. But there's lots more things around HR that we do quietly and silently so that managers shine. And this is a lovely quote by Peter Schultz. It says, hire character, but train skill. And hiring is a key element to HR practices, but get it wrong and you're in for a lot of pain. Get it right and you are seen as the most wonderful person that can actually support a manager. So let's get straight into it. So what is human resources? People are essential to the success of any business. And the performance of people can be a liability, as mentioned before, to any company. So as a leader, manager, supervisor, team lead, as an HR professional, whether you're an HR admin person, an HR business partner, HR director, HR manager, you play a pivotal role to the success of your company. Good human resource management, HRM, is critical for businesses of all sizes. So what is human resource management, or HRM? It's the practice of managing people to achieve better performance at the end of the day. All your employees you should see them as brand ambassadors. If you hire people into a business, you're looking for people who fit the company culture, the right fit for your organization. Because if they are the right fit, they'll be happier. They will stay longer, which will cut down on recruitment costs, which will cut down on training costs. They will be more productive. They'll hit the ground running very quickly than people who aren't the right fit. That's the secret, is actually finding somebody that is the right fit for your company's culture. Fit for purpose. And it might be weird referring to people as human resources or even human capital, which some people do. But human resources are all the people in one capacity or another that contribute to your organization. So they could be full-time employees, FTEs, which, you know, even that sounds a little bit more dehumanizing than you realize. They can be contractors, they can be consultants. They all make up your workforce. So you've got to treat them with respect and the same amount of dignity, whether you're a full-time employee or whether you're part-time employee or your contractor. So we're going to look at 8 different elements, because this workshop that I run has 8 different elements in human resources, and we look at those. We really do a deep dive. So when we look at recruitment and selection, plus talent acquisition, plus also HR, not HR, plus headhunting. There's slightly different permutation. Recruitment and selection is your day-to-day business when you are in recruitment. Your talent acquisition is actually looking for people that have not got these CVs in the workplace out there. They're probably on LinkedIn. You probably go and have a look at your competitors, and you're looking for a subject matter expert in a field where you're battling to hire. It's a scarce skill. And you're looking to see if you can now find somebody so that you can attract them to your organization. That's what talent acquisition is. And then, of course, headhunting is when you're looking for a CEO or a CFO. And that's a specialized recruitment company that does that. And they work in a different way. You have to pay them up front before they even start. 1/3 of the price they get paid halfway through it. They get paid right at the end when they finally find you a CEO or a CFO. But the one thing about recruitment and selection across all boards is that you need to have a very much an updated job profile or job description. Now, a lot of managers will turn around and say to an HR person, can you update the job description? No, it's a partnership. It's a partnership with you. He's the line manager. He's the supervisor. He knows what that person's supposed to be doing. So it has to be a partnership. So when there comes a vacancy, whether it's a new job that has just arrived in your organization, whether it's somebody that is retired, whether it's somebody has resigned, you've got to go back to that job profile or that job description and revisit it. Make sure that it's still fit for purpose, because business changes. We're in the whitewater of change. COVID taught us that. We had to change how we were operating extensively when we were in COVID. But there's all different permutations in a job description that could have changed from when you previously hired the person. And you need to link that job profile, the things that people do, with competencies. Like, for instance, customer relation management. Maybe that job component has a lot of customer relation management. So you need to find the competency for that. And then at the same time, when you are updating it, look at what type of professions that people are coming out of university and technicons, etc., that will actually link back. What kind of qualifications will link back to that? So a good job profile is really, really excellent. Don't go out into the market without finding out what the person's, what the job profile is actually all about. I also believe in structured selection interviewing, and I'm going to teach you a little tool that is useful. And structured selection interviewing is asking poignant questions, like on customer relation management, asking the pointing question at the interview to make sure that that person has actually done this, because past behavior will predict future behavior. And I'm going to show you a little tool that we use for targeted selection interviewing. So it's very, very useful to have a group of individuals, a panel of 4, maybe, or 3, one HR person, one person from the business, normally the line manager, and maybe an associate business. Maybe if you're looking for sales reps, maybe you'll also have somebody from finance sitting there, because there's a lot of stuff that you have to do as a sales rep that links into the financial world. So being skilled in the art of interviewing is really, really important. And then I also want to talk that when you've got a person that is a candidate before they join your organization to become an employee, they have to have a seamless process. So when a candidate becomes an employee, do you have an onboarding process? Who meets them on day 1? Do you make sure that you support the line manager for them to have their laptop, their cell phone, if they have to have a vehicle for transportation, all those things, so that their day 1 is a smooth transition? Has the line manager set up a program where he takes them around and introduces them to all the departments or all the people within the organization and what they do? And just like we do an onboarding, and we think of day 1, week 1, month 1, year 1, in large organizations, have you given them a buddy so that if they all of a sudden their computer is not working right, or they can't connect to the Wi-Fi one morning, as there's somebody that they can go to and say, listen, I can't connect to the Wi-Fi, and then you get a buddy that actually will support them and help them with their transition into the new job. And just like we have an onboarding process, we also have an offboarding process, because you need to make sure all those assets come back to an organization. So it's the whole life cycle. HR supports the whole life cycle of an employee. Part of that is performance management. So has your line manager rolled down your business plan or your vision and values that he has received from either his CEO or his manager or the owner of the business to his employees, so they understand where they fit in the organization? We, as a large organization, my manager's manager even used to share his performance management process with me, so that I could see where I slotted in. And that's also one area where you can also look at your job profile and make sure that it does match. So basically, as the employee, the manager's view may be slightly different from what your reality is. So you can actually say, on this job profile, when I was being interviewed, you talked about this, but actually I'm doing that. Oh yes, we might need to make some corrections on this job profile. It actually helps you build up that job profile. Performance is very important. And that's why you have to not only have a list of tasks. That's not a performance. It's actually putting the types of things that you need to do in your business in clusters and writing smart agreements so that you understand, so that they are specific of what you need to do, that they are measurable, that they're attainable, that they're results driven, and they are time limited, so that you know what you need to be doing. Because it's no good having an opening performance review at the beginning of the year, and then at the end of the year, you find out that you've actually been missing the mark. So that's why it's a good idea to have them very smart and tied down. It's a good idea to have monthly check-ins with your line manager or quarterly check-ins. It's good to have a mid-year review How am I doing? Because you might think you're doing exceptionally well. The line manager is actually saying, you know, I don't think we got the right fit when we interviewed. This person doesn't seem to do, but all he's doing doing it slightly different. And as the HR business partner, you need to partner with this line manager to help correct any misalignment, because poor performance can be exceptionally hard work to try and get somebody up to the same performance as all their peers. And normally what you have to do is do an performance improvement plan to do that. And your HR business partner works with your line manager so that you can get this person that is not performing back up to the stage of where they are performing. Succession planning also comes into performance management. Do you have a pipeline? Do you have a learning pathway from somebody that's in a call center that is answering calls to actually being a team lead? People want to see progression. They want to see learning and development. Have you got that learning pathway so that they can see a future for themselves? They don't see that they're doing the same job day in, day out. I'm having 1 year experience, 1 year's experience 10 times over if I stay in this organization. Is there a learning pathway to another position? And, you know, in succession planning, you can have job shadowing. You can do learning and development. You can do official training courses, but you can do job shadowing. You can do assignments. You can give people exposure so that they feel like they're being stretched. Change management is a critical part of HR if you are going to introduce some huge change in your organization. You have to make sure that your leadership don't run off, that they bring your employees with them with the change. Because as I mentioned, the white water of change is very much our day-to-day reality. There's acquisitions, there's mergers, there's sales off of divisions, and it makes people very nervous about their livelihood. So you need to make sure that any change management that you are using, that you've got the tools there, and you make sure that the workforce know what the vision is going to be, what the end, and you've got to communicate it at every single level, multiple times. People will think, oh, gee, this is going to be a great idea, move across, and they get the slightest little upset and they will swing back to, I knew this wasn't going to work. I knew we couldn't merge these two companies together. We're going to find ourselves on the retrenchment list. You've got to constantly work at any change management, and it's a partnership. You're going to hear me say right through all these 8 levels that it's a partnership. It is a partnership. It's you and the line manager, or you and your leadership working together to make sure that your employees are profitable, are working to your vision. One of the other areas is compensation and benefits, and I'm not a compensation and benefits expert. Matter of fact, we used to have one in our organization, and we had an external company that used to do things like surveys. They used to survey all the other oil companies to find out what we were paying principal engineers so that we knew we were in the ballpark. Otherwise, we found our competitors would poach a lot of our principal engineers. So compensation and benefits is really a very subject matter expert. It filters in a whole lot of things. Some benefits are company cars. Some benefits are home loans. Some benefits are, there are so many that you can add and detract from your organization. And so it's very good to actually have a specialist. One of the other areas that I am very passionate about is employee wellness and the employee experience. So, for instance, I used to manage our EAP, our Employee Assistance Program, so that if somebody was going through a crisis in an organization, they could pick up the phone 24/7, phone an external service provider, and they could get assistance, whether it was a car hijacking or going through a divorce or a teenager, and it was available for both our employees, their spouses, their partners, their children, even under the age of 18, if their child wanted to see somebody or talk to somebody, as long as the parents gave permission, it was able to do. Now that was also a company benefit. But I believe employee experience and wellness is essential. It's a holistic way of looking at your employee. You know, if your employee is sitting in the pilot's chair, flying the plane, and he's worried about his teenage son who started to take drugs, his mind is not fully on flying that plane. You might have 375 passengers sitting behind him. So you need to make sure that what you're offering is of value. So also part of that employee experience is the whole life cycle of the employee. You know, the factors of a workplace well-being, and when at the end of this talk, there will be a handout, and in the handout, this is in there because I really feel that this is essential. And do you have a positive culture in your organization? Do you have an energized environment? Do you have highly effective managers that are working with your employees? As an HR professional, are you helping your managers to be highly effective managers? Is there strong working relationships between different departments, between teams that might be working on a project? Is there job satisfaction? Is there a healthy lifestyle? Do you do a wellness day in your organization? Do you allow, for instance, just before the presentation came up, there was a nice video there of our sponsor, and you could see how there's certain things that you could tap into that would help support their employees in the organization through their medical schemes. Not everybody has time to go to see the doctor because maybe they're so busy. So actually having an online consultation is the ideal. But do you allow people, some departments now used to have a brown bag lunch session, and they used to all get together at lunchtime, and we'd just sit down, and they might have somebody in to come and talk about mindfulness. Or I used to ask somebody, the local gym, to come in and for somebody to actually have an apparatus there to demonstrate what the apparatus did. It's all about that healthy lifestyle. And those Brad Brown lunches didn't have chocolate bars in there. They had an apple, and they had a yogurt, and they had a water, and they had that sort of thing. So, it's all helping that healthy lifestyle, because we become far too sedentary behind our laptops and our computers. So this whole factor of a workplace well-being, there has to be a certain amount of engagement and resilience and performance around it. You've got to make it a lifestyle within your organization. I remember one manager used to say, I don't use the lift, we're going to all use the stairs. And in the beginning, there was one lady in his department, first flight of stairs, she was huffing and puffing, and she said, I'm getting into the lift for the second and the third. But by month 3, she was up all 4 flights of stairs. And she said, that has really tested me. She said, I'm getting back into this wellness now. So it's how you actually approach it. And also do what you say and say what you do, you know? Learning and development is a huge area. For many years, I worked as a skills development facilitator in our organization. And you need to look at all levels of your organization. Can they all tap in to some sort of learning, some sort of training? And it doesn't have to be training that costs a lot of money, training that takes them out of the workplace. Some of it can be online. Some of it can be free things. Some can be podcasts. Some can be assignments. Some can be job shadowing. You know, but is that learning and development? Is it stretching your employee? Is it making them feel like they're growing? Because that's the art of making somebody feel satisfied within their organization, that they are actually growing, that they're not being ignored because they're in the lower levels of your organization. And please feel free to put any questions in the chat about any of these topics, because you know, you might need more, you might have more around recruitment and selection and less on succession planning, and more around learning and development and less on compensation and benefits. So, you know, please feel free to put things in the chat. You've also got HR support of the organizational mindset. Now, what does that mean? That might be a new one to some people. So you do have employees who have quite a fixed mindset. And I had noticed that some of them were a lot older generation. They might have been doing their job for a long time. They might have been within the organization for a long time. And they 9 times out of 10 say, well, we've done it like this way for like 10, 15 years. Why do we need to change, you know? Or it's a younger person that's sitting there thinking, I can't do this. We actually can't do it yet. But with support, with it coaching and mentoring and training, maybe on the job training, you might be able to go to a growth mindset. That you say to yourself, you know something, I can do this. I can think differently. Maybe it's somebody that says, Bernadette, there's no ways I can get up and do public speaking. I can't introduce people. And you slowly but surely coach them and mentor them and sit in a room and say, I want you to do the present. I want you to present. Say, good morning, everybody. This is so-and-so. It's coming to talk to you. Get them to do it in informal things like a brown bag session at lunchtime, and then compliment on how well they've done it. So that when they actually have to stand up in the boardroom and you've got the chairman of the board sitting there, they feel confident. The mindset from a fixed mindset has changed to a growth mindset, and they can do this. To the extent that one day you'll actually see them standing up and doing the presentation themselves, or partnering with somebody to do the presentation themselves. So it's a different way of thinking. And are you, as an HR professional or an HR manager, supporting that person to giving them that growth, to giving them that mindset? Do you have a culture in your organization where failure is not something where you are being smacked over the knuckles? You feel like you're back at school with the ruler. Is the culture in your organization is let's learn from failure? And you know, there's massive failures and there's also small failures. It's actually learning from those small failures that could probably stop a massive failure. And it's also, how do we get everybody together to rethink this? And when it comes to learning from failure, I always remember Thomas Edison. Thomas Edison, if you remember, he didn't invent the light bulb. A lot of people say he invented the light bulb. No, he didn't. He patented the two light bulbs, and he didn't speak for a long time. And his mother took him out of school, and she allowed him to play in the basement. And she said she heard lots of explosions in the basement. And he was working on light bulbs. He wanted to perfect it. And when he was being interviewed many, many years later, the reporter said to him, how do you feel that you had 999 failures of the light bulb before you actually had one that worked? And he said, I didn't have 99 failures. I had 99 ways that I knew that the light bulb would not work or not work long enough. So it's the way you look at it. And to allow people to fail and support them and work through what has happened actually helps build up their self-esteem. It helps them, it helps other employees around them to realize that, you know, we do make mistakes. People have to be supported within the workplace. The other thing is also HR information systems and HR data analytic things. Is in the beginning, I mentioned that people say HR is overhead, HR is expensive. If they want to cut budgets, that's where they go. They say, let's cut the training budget for starters. All the bells and whistles get pulled out of it. But this is where HR professionals actually stand up in the room and say, hold a second. Our information systems can tell you that, you know, how many people have taken leave this year, how many people haven't. Okay, so how many days leave do we still have sitting in the system? Okay, we have to have that on our balance sheet, because if these people resign, we have to be able to pay them out. So this is where the finance people look at the HR people and they think, oh, I hadn't thought about that. So you need to make sure you've got good information systems, that you're capturing the right stuff, that you can actually say, we've got 200, we have 4,000 employees, but we've only got 200 days that of leave that has not been taken, that we have to roll over on our balance sheet for the following year. It's all that analytics, you know, having a look at somebody's sick leave cycle, making sure they're not taking too much of it, making sure that other people are taking leave. Some people will work, and then they'll fall over. No, you speak to a manager and say, listen, you've got 2 high performers in your department. They haven't taken a single day's leave in the last 18 months. They're going to fall over. You need to schedule some leave. Even if there is a project on the go, they need to have some downtime. They need to have some family time. So all these elements support you as a line manager, but it's a partnership, and you as an HR professional have to have some form of competency in some of these areas, in these different areas, elements. And else has gone to sleep. And I want to go back to the recruitment and selection rules that supports performance. So we used to use this tool, and it's a huge impact in the area. So I mentioned that when you're hiring somebody and you're on a panel, you might be doing a structured selective interview, and you ask a question, and you have a competency, say for instance, customer relation management, and you ask a question like, tell me about a time when you had to deal with an unsatisfied, difficult customer. How did you handle it? and the person sitting in the interview says, this was the situation, or this was the task. Now, a lot of times they spend a lot of time talking about the situation, the task. But this STAR technique, it's not only you want them to tell you about the situation and the task, but you also want them to tell you about the actions they took. And if they start talking about we, you can say, who is the we? Because if they did it as a team, they didn't do it as an individual. It's far better in an interview to talk about I. So this was the situation, this was the task. I did these particular actions. Now, if they stop there, it's not a complete STAR in the interview. You can actually say to them, and so what were the results? And as I've mentioned before, we always used to have a panel of 4. We used to have an HR person. We used to have somebody there that was from the business, probably the line manager. We'd have somebody from a supporting business or a supporting department. And sometimes we just used to have another person from the same business unit, or we only had a panel of 4. And we each used to have 2 competency questions on different topics. Like you can do customer market focus, you can do financial acumen, you could do demonstrating developing a team. So if it was developing a team, you could ask a question like, describe a time when you knew that a colleague or a team member needed to develop new skills. How did you know, and what did you do? So you are posing that question so that they set up the situation and the task. They tell you what their actions were, and they tell you what the results were, and that is a full STAR. And this is also quite useful for you to remember this, but that if you're going for an interview, because they're wanting to hear how your past behavior will impact your future behavior when something crosses your desk that is more difficult to do. And when you've actually got these questions and you've asked 3 or 4 people, you can rank them and rate them, and then you can sit down objectively and say, okay, I rated 2 out of 5 for this answer. I rated 4 out of 5 for this answer, and then do the calculation, and then you will be able to see which candidate is the best candidate for that position. And if you do that type of interviewing, you're guaranteed to have somebody that is a good fit for the job against the competencies. A good fit will have the qualifications because you've checked that as well. And they will be able to ease in and hit the ground running and start working more effectively as soon as they arrive in your organization. So I find this very valuable, whether I was going for an interview or whether I was actually doing the interviewing. And we used to train up a lot of our managers around this technique so that it improved their interviewing skills, so that they actually improved getting the right person in the job. Are there any questions before I go on to the next slide?
Bernie, yeah, there's first of all, I just want to say that the recording of the session will be made available to everybody, as well as there's a handout that we will send out and the presentation back. So you'll get all of that in an email tomorrow. And then Mary's just asking is, how is AI going to affect the HR functions in an organization?
Yeah, there's a lot of talk about AI and HR functions. I think at the end of the day, it might support people in policies, writing, maybe job description writing, so that you get a generic. But at the end of the day, you've got to do a needs analysis or analyze that person's individual job. You've got to take your company and you've got to look at those policies and make them fit for purpose. So AI will be a tool. I think a lot of people got frightened of AI in the beginning. They thought it was going to take over their jobs. I think AI will be a tool, but at the end of the day, you don't want something generic. Even your payroll 9 times out of 10 is not generic. So I think it will give us good baselines. And possibly we will use it a lot more in training. But I still think there is place for the human being to look at the needs analysis and actually say, well, yes, this is a nice basic job description, but there are other contributing factors in our organization that are missing, elements that are missing. And so you will still need to refine it. But actually, it means that you don't have to start from scratch with using AI. Because like if you went and you asked them, give me an administrative assistant's job description, and they pulled it out, you might look at your admin assistant and say, well, hold a second, they also do a heck of a lot of work around getting people security systems into the organization. They make sure that people have the right access to go from where they need to go. They make sure that they've cleared them. There's so many different permutations that it will still need a human intervention. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you, Bernadette. That helped a lot. Thank you.
Yeah. Do not be afraid of using AI. I think it's a really good tool. But at the same time, you need to cast your eyes over it. You need to look at the business and think, okay, what do we need to change here to make this more realistic for our organization? Any other questions?
No, that's fine. Murakani is just asking if you'll get a certificate of attendance. We'll send you one, Murakani.
Okay. So who should attend this? So HR practitioners, it's always good for us to check in and make sure we're doing best practice. Then there are graduates or new to the function. They've learned it all in the textbooks in the university, but when you go into an organization, you think this is nothing like what they said in the lecture, and so it's good for HR, for graduates to actually to do this course, because it gives them an insight, and also gives them an insight of what other organizations are doing as well. Your office manager, who may have some aspects of HR, the same as your administrative system, your administrative assistant. Sometimes even finance people have an HR element as well. And then, of course, this workshop can be scheduled. It can be run over 5 hours in one day. It's very heavy going when you do that, because we go through lots of tools in each individual element. And so I find for the best results is to actually have a 1 hour session over a 4-week period. A 5-week period, sorry, not a 4-week period, 5-week period. And that way, through the week, you can think about certain things. And I give you a little bit of a homework, but it's not a lot of homework. It's mainly thinking through different concepts, and we can talk about them when you come back the following week. So it actually stretches you and it broadens you around this workshop when we run it. And as I've said, if you have any more questions or would like to take a deep dive, that is my email address to get hold of me. You can also follow us on at Thrivalist Life Coaching. I really have enjoyed presenting this to you today. HR is one of my passions. I do believe that employees, from being candidate to exiting your organization and after they've left your organization, should be brand ambassadors. And if you can give the life cycle of an employee such good transition, they will not talk badly about your organization, and they will still drive onto your forecourt and fill up with your petrol at the end of the day. And that's the way I always used to treat anybody that was new to our organization, so that they actually associated me with the brand and they stayed as a brand ambassador.